Hello, how are you doing today?
He- Hello, I am doing very well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
We're excited to have you on and to hear from you. Should be good. So, just to start off with, so that our young people can get to know who you are a little bit better, could you tell us about growing up in Kingston, Jamaica?
Growing up in Kingston, Jamaica was a very different world than today. No phones, no television, and lots of football, soccer, football, and it was a, a much fun time. For me, it was a lot about friends riding bicycles, playing football in the street. And as I grew up, it was searching to find football games. Football was basically my life in the early years. Had dreams of playing for Manchester United, but it never did reach that level. And by high school, mid high school, I got really hooked on art and drawing, and so I progressed to my pursuit of art. This was a lot influenced by my father, who was an artist, and I lived around art. He talked art every day, constantly, and so art became such an integral component or ingredient in my life and in my psyche.
And what was it like when you moved to America? Because that happened when you were fairly young. And what was it like going from the kind of culture of Jamaica to the complete kind of different culture? What was that like for you being so young? How did that influence you?
I didn't move young. I actually, well, young is relative. I was 44 when I moved. So I would consider myself young. But the first half of my career and my life was in Jamaica. And Jamaica, being a British colony at one stage, originally being a British colony, had a lot of the influences, the political system, the religious orientation of the society, uh, the school system. A lot of it came from the British systems. And so when I do visit the UK, I see so many similarities. But the first half of my career was in Jamaica, of my life was in Jamaica. I moved from high school to art school in Jamaica, the Edna Manley College for the Visual and Performing Arts. And ironically, my father was the first principal of that school and helped to establish the curriculum and establish the school in the mid 60s after Jamaica gained independence. So it was a kind of natural progression for me to, in my pursuit of art, move to the Jamaica School of Art. And from graduating from the Jamaica School of Art, I set up my studio as a practicing artist and went about creating sculpture, drawing, and so on. And I would say for the next 20 years, I was practicing in Jamaica, exhibiting infrequently outside of Jamaica, but frequently in Jamaica. By the time I decided to leave Jamaica at the age of 44, I had already established myself as probably the um, preeminent sculptor in Jamaica. I had a number of public sculptures. Public sculpture was something that I purposely sought after. I wanted to have my work in the public. I remember thinking there was one sculpture that was very prominent, and I said to myself, if I was able to get one sculpture in the public domain, I would be very happy. I probably have over 40 sculptures now in public places. So I should be very, very happy, but I am very grateful for, what I've been able to do so far, but there's so much more to do. So in Jamaica, at the age of about 44, early 40s, I decided that I wanted to find a way of getting my work on a more international stage, a more international arena. And so I came to the United States. By then, Jamaica had developed a much closer link with the United States than it had with Britain because of the proximity of the United States. Miami is an hour and a half flight away, and so on. The advent of the television and media brought the United States a lot closer to the lifestyle of Jamaica. And so I decided that the United States was probably the place for me to go. It was a very difficult, I had traveled to the United States before and I had a great feeling of what it was like, but living here in the United States is culturally very different. One of the differences between Jamaica and the United States and Britain is that Jamaica is a predominantly Black country. The whites, other races are in the minority. We have the motto is out of many one people. So we have Asians, we have whites, we have Africans. So it's a very diverse community, but I would say it is Black dominated. So our politicians, our teachers, our ministers of religion, are over 99% Black. So it gave a sense of a strong identity as a Black person. And Jamaica in itself is a dynamic country worldwide, through music, through culture, through the arts, through sport. And so Jamaica has this aura and this reputation internationally that we run things. We can run things. We are very aggressive and dominant. We have a very personality. And so coming to the United States, I figured I had to follow in that trend. It took time, but I have been able to establish myself as an American Jamaican or Jamaican American sculptor and gaining international recognition. It gave me the opportunity to travel more, to see more places, and to work in various places. So I went to a symposium in China where I spent a few months for there, Guatemala. And so my international connections grew and my exposure and experience internationally was able to grow after coming to the United States.
Yeah, really interesting to hear about your life in Jamaica and moving around and being able to establish yourself. It's really interesting. Also that your dad was the president of the school you went to learn art. That must have been fun. Being
It had its challenges.
So thinking about your father, obviously he's quite a famous painter, Barrington Watson. How did it affect your career being a sculptor, having a dad who was famous for his art in painting?
I see the influence as extremely positive. There might seem to be negatives, but they are not negatives. People at some stage wondered if I was just going to be a carbon copy of my father. He insists that I am a better painter, but I chose sculpture to uh, get away from his shadow. But that's not why I chose sculpture. I chose it because I have an affinity and a love for it, and form motivates or moves me more than color. But the positive is that I learned so much about art, the history of art, the philosophy of art, art as a way of life. I learned so much from him. You know, I will have solutions and wonder where did that knowledge come from. I don't remember getting it from the School of Art, and then I say, I remember hearing my father talk about these things. So it was very positive. It also provided me with a role model in terms of how to proceed as a professional artist, making a living, because he always insisted that art is a noble profession that is worthy to be considered equally in medicine or law or engineering or any one of the arts, any one of the professions, and probably even more so because one is constantly learning, one is constantly pushing. The world of art is constantly on the move, and so it requires constant retooling, constant uh, research. And so he made a great effort in terms of presenting art as a worthy profession, which was not always so. For instance, his father wanted him to do law, thinking that art could not provide a living for himself and his family. And he demonstrated that it could. So, you learn things like that from him, as well as the lessons of art itself. So I had no fear or hesitation in opening my own studio and working professionally as an artist, because I saw his example. People would come to see my work and think, they're coming to see a cardboard copy of my father, and would end up coming to congratulate me in terms of me having my own voice as an artist. So any negatives that might appear, I turned them quickly into a positive. I had no fear of the comparison with him. I was confident, and a lot of that confidence came from lessons from him as well. But I was confident that I could have my own voice as a human being and as an artist.
It's really kind of lovely to hear that, because I think, many young people grow up and they're in a similar situation to your father, where their parents don't believe that they can have an artistic or creative career and be able to sustain themselves. And it must be really nice to have experienced the flip side of that, of having someone who does know that you can and is supportive in your kind of creative pursuits. It's really nice to hear about that. And definitely seeing all this positive sides of those things. It's really lovely to kind of hear. And of course, you're such a well-known and amazing sculptor. We've shown some of the pictures as you've been talking of your sculptures that you have around. And the next picture that's going to come up is a very special monument that's to do with today's talk and our next question, which is, can you tell us about the moment you found out that you had been selected to create the Windrush Monument that's at Waterloo Station in London?
It was a tremendous moment when I was told that I had gotten the commission to do the Windrush, because it brought so many things together. It connected so many dots in my life. From a professional standpoint, from a personal standpoint, from my relationship with my parents and their experiences, from the connection between Jamaica and the UK, things that I saw and learned in Jamaica that were things that were influenced by the British experience. And so when I learned that I got the commission, I was really elated. It presented another level in my journey, and the opportunity for me to, as they say, go across the pond to have some artistic activity and recognition in the UK. So on so many levels, it was a great opportunity for me.
Yeah, and it's definitely a beautiful monument that, you know, is so proudly stood there on the screen for young people to see as well. Can you tell us about kind of your design process and how you brought this to life? You know, it was such a big task. Where did you even start?
Where to start was the big question, because we're looking at spanning 1, 2, 3, 4 decades, over 4 decades, from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, from the initial arrival to the development of persons as successes within the British society. So that was the hardest decision or aspect of the monument, where to start and how do I pitch this story. I started reading, looking at videos about the Windrush scandal, the Windrush experience, the Windrush achievements, how the Windrush began, what the journey was like, the families that went to Britain, the individuals, and also looking back at some of the experiences that my parents had. I didn't even know that I was part of the Windrush generation. It's not something I considered or contemplated. I don't think it was something that my parents thought about either. But I would hear stories from my parents about tidbits about their experience, why they went, what they experienced there, why they went back to Jamaica to live, and so on. So it opened more questions than I anticipated. But eventually, I decided that the beginning is where I needed to start. It seems almost like a truism to say you start at the beginning, but this is where I figured is the moment that would stand the test of time. Because if I were to freeze it within another moment along the journey, the question of how did we get here would still need to be answered. So the initial voyage was the point, and the suitcases came home to me. And when that came home to me, I realized that, yeah, this is special. My mother had a similar suitcase under her bed, and that suitcase had gained some recognition within Jamaican folklore. There was a radio program about a girl from the country who came to town to seek a better life, and she carried with her this strange, funny suitcase that took on a character. It became she was Dulcimina. I think the program was Dulcimina Comes to Town, and the suitcase became known within the radio program as a Dulce. So whenever she had an issue or she needed anything, she would open the suitcase and out would come the solution. So this suitcase held the solution to all her problems. Every week, it was a new solution, a new item coming from the suitcase. And so in Jamaican folklore, there was, the tale, oh, if you had a strange looking bag, it would be called a dulce. And so I remember my mother having one under her bed. I don't know what solutions it held, but she kept it under her bed, so it probably did provide a solution or two during its span. And I decided this should be an integral part of the composition. And then the decision was it should be what lifts them up. It should be their foundation. It should be where things began. So after, I would say, many weeks of contemplation and a bit of apprehension about even starting, once I started to put the design together, which was a very quick manipulation of the figures and the suitcases, it all came together, the suitcases and the family. And how to depict the family, a lot of it were taken from photographs of the times, the attire, the posture, and the whole aspect of the family. So once I decided on the era, which is the beginning, and the important elements, which were the family and the suitcases, how to pitch the family was also another conscious decision in terms of their dress. I could see from photographs of the times that people were dressed in their, as they call it in Jamaica, the Sunday best, the clothes that they wear to church, the jacket and tie, the hat, the various clothing. And I remember also my struggles with my father about him wanting me to dress appropriately, which was jacket and tie and so on. So that generation paved the way for this generation to be able to dress in shorts and flip-flops and become a lot more casual, because they were able to establish themselves as dignified people, as professionals that didn't have to depend on clothing for their own feeling of self-worth. But of the day, it was, my father was always well dressed. His father, going to the movies, would dress in jacket and tie. That was the dress of the era. So I decided that I wanted them dressed in this way. So that's basically how the design progressed. Another important aspect of the design is how the hands connect the three figures. The man and woman are connected through holding hands, demonstrating the support. The child is being gently encouraged by the other hand of the mother, while the child, holds onto her mother's skirt tails, being pulled along in this journey, almost reluctantly as she looks back at familiar territory. She, the girl, clutches her little handbag that has her values and her belongings. One can only imagine what important, quote unquote, things were in the little girl's handbag. So these were some of the conscious thoughts of the design. I wanted another thing I consciously strived for was the posture of especially mother and father, a posture of confidence, of openness, of determination, and pride, because they were a very prideful people. And we in turn should be very proud of their achievements and their journey. So some of the things that went into the design process.
I think looking at that, you can definitely get some of those key aspects. And I definitely love the idea of, what is in that little girl's handbag. A really kind of nice thing to think about. And you can definitely see the kind of their pride and their confidence and their hopes. Is there kind of any other kind of key emotion or something that you wanted this to say when you see it?
Well, I think each individual in the composition, in the family, kind of expresses a different emotion. The father is busy scanning what is ahead. We are in an era where women are in the forefront. There was a time when women played a more supportive role in the family structure, but at the same time, they were the glue that held everything together, and probably the strongest personality within the group because they encouraged the male forward while had a lot of the family responsibilities. Thankfully, things are changing where the roles are more evenly shared. But she is while he is looking forward, ready to stride forward. She is strong. She is well grounded. She is determined. She is the rock within the composition. The child is a bit more apprehensive. She is looking back. She is wondering, where are we going? Keeping close to family, hanging on to her mother's coattails. I must also include that I have twin granddaughters who are the age of the little girl, and they became models for the sculpture for the little girl. The big problem I had, they are not identical but very close. So the big problem I had is to make it look like both of them, because I could not leave one out. So the little girl is inspired by my granddaughters, which I think is so appropriate and full circle, because although they live in the United States and are American, they are descendants of the Windrush generation, and this is where a lot of it started. Well, I'm sure it started long before then, but this was a watershed moment within the legacy of the community and within my personal legacy as well.
That's definitely a really lovely kind of sweet tidbit. And I bet that's going to be a fun fact for them, isn't it? If they ever have to say, oh, fun fact about yourself, well, I inspired the Windrush Monument.
And I had to make sure that they were at the unveiling, to get their moment in the sun.
Couldn't miss that. For a final question before we move on to our student questions, so please do keep your questions coming in. We'll get around to answering them in just a second. But our final question before we look at those is, why is it so important for younger generations to learn about Windrush and know about the Windrush generation?
Well, it's important to know where you're coming from. As Marcus Garvey says, you have to know your history before you can project your future. And it's important to know where you're coming from, because that genetic memory is there, influencing how we move forward. And it gives us the strength, it gives us the courage, the history to move forward. So it's important that the young know that their struggle, for instance, is not unique per se, in that they have their parents have gone through a lot of the apprehensions, maybe in a different way, it was a different time, but the emotion is the same. We recognize that we all want the same thing. We're looking for progress, movement forward. We're looking for opportunities for ourselves and our families. And it's a common thread. So it's important for us to understand that you know, your parents were not born big. They have gone through what you are going through, and it can be done. They have made it, and you can make it. They have made strides forward. You can do it as well. So it's important that the next generation, the present generation, understand the commonalities with and a lot of the genetic memory that is passed on from parent to child, and for instance, having grandchildren is even more miraculous than having children in my experience, because I see my children going through what I went through with them. I see their children doing the same things that they did, same mischief, the same aspirations, the same joy. And we recognize the legacy connections so much greater as we age. And so we need to, keep that family thread alive, and let the next generation know that we are connected, the young and the old, our past and our future.
Yeah, what a nice thing to think about as we move on to our student questions. A nice way to kind of wrap up the formal questions. So thank you for answering all of those questions. We have some student questions. We have a question that's been submitted for you from St George's School in Gravesend, and they've asked, why is art a good way to remember the past?
Art targets our emotions, and our emotions are probably our strongest driver. The emotion of love, the emotion of hate, the emotion of doubt, the anxiety, confidence, joy. Our emotions are our strongest drivers. So by targeting one's emotions, it stimulates, and it stimulates the involvement in the topic that is being discussed. And so once that emotion is stirred, then it creates the energy to investigate, the energy to draw on those emotions and the stories that are being told, or the ideas that are being expressed. So art is an excellent way of making that connection, keeping it alive, and stimulating the energy to explore the concepts that are being discussed. Otherwise, it will be bland. Otherwise, there will be no motivation. And the train of thought today is go for what you love, go for what stimulates you, and build on your strengths, and we can reach much further. So art tries to do this. It tries to build on our strength. It tries to build on our emotions and our positive emotions, that will drive you to understand life so much more, because at the end of the day, it's not judgment per se, it's more understanding. And if we understand people instead of judging people, I think the society would move forward much more.
Definitely. Thank you for answering that one. I'm gonna crack on, see if we can get all of these answered by the end of our time. Our next question, we've had quite a few that have been submitted from Ashton Manor Academy. And the first question is, when did you realise that you were gifted in the visual arts?
I think in mid-high school, I recognized that it was a combination of a gift and a combination of my experiences living with art all my life, seeing art in my home all my life, all that I can remember. I recognize that second to football, art was my gift. I still dream about playing for Manchester United. So mid-high school, I was getting success, and the success was driving more enthusiasm. And with that enthusiasm, I would draw more and more, and it turned into more success. So, and I recognize that, well, I will tell a very funny story. When I went to the art school, on the first day, we had figure drawing, and I thought that I could draw fairly well. I thought I was a good draftsman. And the first session, the model was there, we were drawing, and I felt good about my drawing. The adrenaline was up, and we took a break. And I got up thinking, oh, my drawings would be so wonderful. And when I looked around the class, I was shocked to see so many talented, gifted draftsmen there. And I realized that I'm not that special, or I'm not special at all. What I need to do is work at it. Yes, the gift was there, but others had the same gift. I now needed to plot a course of how do I turn this gift into something more. And work was the simple answer. I just had to work at it more and more.
I love that you say that, because their next question was, is it talent or graft? That's the key to success. So I love that within that you said, you can have talent, but you need that hard work within just answering that one question.
Yes.
So our next one is, why do you think it's important for young people to develop skills in the arts?
Well, as I said, art is a kind of segue into understanding who we are as an individual, as a community, as a world. Art tries to explore much more so than, in my estimation, to more than judging. It's not about judging who you are, but it's about understanding who we are. And art allows or facilitates that understanding and that research and that investigation into who we are. And I think it opens the mind in terms of gaining some of that understanding. And so I think it is, if not the most important thing in terms of, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's that understanding of who we are that we take with us. The possessions, the wealth, even the education when I say education, in terms of whether it's math, science, law, medicine, is one thing, but who we are as an individual, as people, is what we are striving to achieve. And it can be achieved through so many different avenues, that understanding. Each one is a different road, but I think they all lead to the same place in terms of seeking and finding some level of enlightenment. So, art is crucial for that understanding.
We have just 2 questions left. So our next one is from Burford School, and they have asked, what was the hardest thing to do? I think that's a question around the monument. So what was the hardest thing to do when it came to the process of making that?
The hardest thing to do was to come up with the idea, to figure out where I want to pitch the monument. Once I know where I'm going, the doing is relatively easy. I've done, 1,000 hands, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 ears, 1,000 feet. But what is it saying? The message behind it, the composition. What are the elements for the composition? That is the hard part. That is where the work is. Art is a combination of the skill and craft, but also the philosophy or the message. And the craft is the easier one to achieve. The understanding of where you're going is more difficult.
Great. So the final question before we move to wrap up the session is again from Ashton Manor Academy, and they asked, did your creation of the Windrush Monument lead to any inspiration for other arts of works that you did after that or in the future?
Yes, it did. It taught me so many lessons. The monument itself was very much performance. I had very little time, so it was performance more than practice. It taught me a lot in terms of what I do know, and what I don't know as well. It opened doors in terms of the composition, the grouping of the figures, the use of, I rarely use other props outside of the human figure. So using the suitcases was quite a deviation for me, and I think a successful deviation. For me, it was the most fun in the process. So if I remember the question, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us today. Do you have any final thoughts or feelings that you'd like to leave our young people with before we say goodbye?
No, I want to express my appreciation for the interest in the Windrush Monument, and my gratitude in terms of it being able to stimulate and make a difference. And I hope that it encourages us to all investigate more closely our heritage, our legacy, whether it be the Windrush or any other legacy that each individual will explore. I am hoping that it will lead and stimulate that sort of investigation and ultimately understanding of where we are coming from as a human race. So I hope it has that extension in terms of its influence and attraction.
Well, Basil, thank you for joining us and for talking to us about your life in Jamaica and coming to England to create the monument and the whole process itself, along with who inspired you along the way, and all your source materials to make that monument happen. It's been really lovely to have you on, and we're so happy that you could join us and talk about the Windrush and talk about the monument. And it's been so great. So thank you.
It was a pleasure being here. I enjoyed, and I hope that I was able to leave a gem or two that can be extracted from the suitcases.
Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Thank you too.